There have been many, many maritime disasters before and since the Titanic. Why is it that this story remains so fixed, so persistently in the public's mind and heart?
I think there are several elements at play here. I mean, it's the sheer magnitude, which was a shock to the people in 1912, and for many, even some of the survivors like Jack Thayer, who said, looking back on it, it didn't seem to be a stable world. Now, of course, we know that that wasn't the case, but this was how it was seen in the post-World War I era. And this, for the people who lived through that, it seemed to be the first shock, and then from then things accelerated. We went into the war. But also you had, while 2/3 of the people on that vessel died, 1/3 survived. And they had nearly 3 hours to make life or death decisions. And it was a very articulate age. They came out of it, they told their stories. And I think speaking to people about it, what seems to capture them is the idea of being able to project themselves into that, to imagine what they would do in that situation. And I think as we see these days on TV, we're still very fascinated by that lost upstairs, downstairs world.
And it's extraordinary how the ripples, the shock that you talked about, rippled right around the world and way beyond the seas. I recall seeing in Broken Hill, of all places, a memorial that the locals erected to the bravery of the bandsmen who kept playing as the Titanic sank, that it reaches an outback town like Broken Hill.
Absolutely extraordinary. There is a memorial in Madrid to the postal clerks, and the junior wireless operator has memorials in several places around the world. These stories really captured their imagination then, and they still resonate today.
Why does it resonate for you? What is it about it that fascinates you?
Well, I'm an ocean-loving girl. I grew up on the northern beaches here in Sydney, and I also have a passion for history, and I think when you marry the two of those, sooner or later you will come to the story of the Titanic.
You've gone to one particular story from the Titanic. I mentioned this book you've written about the fifth officer, Harold Lowe. What did he do that prompted you to call your book Titanic Valor?
It's an extraordinary story, and in fact I became interested because I kept coming across this name in survivor accounts, and then when I read the inquiry testimony in America and in the UK, the same name kept appearing, and it was this junior officer. He was junior, the second most junior officer on board the vessel. He was only 29 years old, and yet people spoke of how not only did he manage to help load and lower 5 lifeboats, he corralled them afterwards into a flotilla and was able to transfer his passengers into the other boats and then return to try and pull survivors out of the water. And he was the only officer who succeeded in doing so. And then on top of that, he towed another boat to the Carpathia, the rescue vessel, and he saved the occupants of a half-sunk collapsible boat on the way there as well.
Well, we must tell the audience that's the gentleman sitting between us, Mr. Lowe, just sitting here between us. And elements of his story wound its way in a roundabout way into Titanic, the film, as well.
They did actually. I mean, it was an extraordinary experience when I sat there seeing it for the first time back in 1997, and suddenly there he was up on screen, as depicted quite by the distinctly resembling him, Ioan Gruffudd, who's another Welshman, and he's the one who actually saves Kate Winslet at the end of the movie.
What a claim. You're about to go on a history recreating voyage on the Atlantic. Tell us about it. What are you going to be doing?
It'll be the Titanic Memorial Cruise on the Balmoral, and she'll be sailing from Southampton on the 8th of April. She'll be calling at what was then Queenstown and what we now call, reverted to the name Cove, which was the last port of call from the Titanic. From then she goes on to Halifax, but on the precise anniversary, which is 2:20 a.m. in the morning on the 15th of April, she will be over the wreck site where there will be a commemorative service held, and then from there to Halifax and on to New York.
How are you preparing yourself emotionally for that service above the very spot where she lies?
I think it's very hard to prepare yourself for something like that. I have been to similar services at dawn ceremonies, for example, and I've been to some of the locations connected with the Titanic victims and the Lusitania victims in the UK, and you're never quite sure how the emotional impact will hit you. I imagine it'll be a very quiet and still moment out there at the when you're out there in the middle of the ocean. It can be very vast and very desolate, particularly in that time of the morning and in those circumstances.
Hopefully it's quiet and still. Hopefully the Atlantic is cooperating on that particular day. The wreck is sitting almost 4 kilometres down below the surface, and of course it's been explored. We've seen some extraordinary images from down there, but when technology allows, do you believe Titanic should be raised or left where it is?
I believe it should be left where it is. I think probably by the time technology has advanced to the point where we could raise it, it's far deeper, for example, than the Mary Rose, and that required an extraordinary effort to bring it up. You had to cradle the vessel. She's already in two large parts. The stern and the bow are quite distinctly located away from each other, and she's essentially melting into the sea floor. She's rusting away.
But not in our memories.
Over in our memories.
Particularly yours, Inga Scheel, author, and about to retrace that voyage. Thanks so much for coming in and talking with us this evening.
A
Much
pleasure.
appreciated.
Thank you.